Hello, joining me here for week 15, I believe it is, of Discipleship Equip is Ron and Deb Schultz. And I realize you can't probably read this, but you should be familiar with this. It's my spiritual health assessment. And on here are a variety of ways that we can pick to choose to help grow as the man or the woman that God wants us to be. And we all know that one of the vital ways that God wants us to grow is in prayer. Last week we talked about personal prayer and how to help new disciples begin to engage in that life of prayer. And then in this week's lessons, it talks a little bit about praying as a couple. And I've invited Ron and Deb to come and talk because I've enjoyed hearing their story about how they built up and began the process then of praying together as a couple. So Ron and Deb, why don't you just share with us a little bit about how did you guys come to that place where you decided we need to pray?
I think what we looked at, we needed some tools to help with better communication. We needed a time when we could come together in prayer and just grow together as a couple. And I think the prayer gave us that chance to do that, to come together.
Yeah, and we struggled with a couple different things, and so we went through the marriage class, which I think some people have done, and it was a great sounding board to get into the direction of recognizing where we're at. And one of the things that I think was the key piece was, for me, and praying on that was when it was brought up through the session, the submission piece, which I think a lot of women have struggled with, as that being a bad thing, and not accepting the fact that it's not a bad thing. It's an actual willingness to yield to someone else. And so once you overcome that and want to accept the fact that your husband is a very key piece and letting him actually do what God wants him to do, which is being the role in the family, the leader of the family, and being okay to let him do that job, and where we're not taking control away from him, I think is a very key piece in starting us on that process. So I think it's important for women to be able to let go of that, and that doesn't mean that that's a bad thing or that they're not still very important, vital role, but letting them do what they're meant to do, be responsible, and be men over their children, and the leader over you. And quite honestly, it's very freeing to allow that to happen. It's a lot less pressure.
There was a lot of praying about that piece too, about how that was going to look. I was away from the home, had a couple jobs for a long time to keep Deb home with our son Zach, and so there was a lot of praying about how that was going to look, how I was going to lead, how how we were going to work together as a family. So it was mutual, and how it was going to look to lead, but it was definitely a process and a change of mindset.
So you more fully stepped into this role as spiritual leader of your home, Ron, and then just share with us a little bit about how did you get started, and then what are some of the practical things you guys do to incorporate couple prayer into your regular lives?
Well, I think in getting started, it was for one, setting priorities. I made sure that I was home for dinner each evening, and we prayed together as a family before we start meals. And then making sure we have a time that we pray together in the morning, to make sure and set that as a priority. And remembering that it is a process and it doesn't happen every single day, but we try our hardest to make sure that that is forefront, that we are there, and we set that time aside as something that's important to us.
And we certainly have used the tools. We've found some books at various Bible stores where we did a 31 prayer challenge, and that helped us get that started, that momentum started, because it's not a natural thing to do. And so that gave us it gives us his and her book, where it helps you start that prayer process and how to pray for each other openly. And it definitely got us in the momentum of the like everything else. It's a process and a practice. You have to make a conscious effort at doing that, and not getting wrapped up in the busyness, and recognizing that God has to come first in your family, so that it does run better, because it is challenging.
Well, like you said too, that was key too, because it wasn't natural. It was very awkward to begin with, but because I never prayed really out loud with people a lot, but it was something that we worked at, and it's very natural now, and it's something that it's a good way to express yourself.
In Jesus' final time with his disciples, he prayed for their unity, for their oneness. How have you seen praying together affect your oneness or unity as a couple?
I think it allows us to, as I mentioned before, communicate more. We're able to voice things. I think that there was times before when we wouldn't talk, we would literally not talk for a week at a time if we were having problems and those things. And this time in praying doesn't allow us to do that now. We're more open. We're more apt to talk and to forgive and come together a lot quicker and voice those things in those time of prayers. Bring it to God.
Yep, being more humble and accepting the fact that you don't have to be right all the time, but that it's okay to forgive one another. And I know that there's a lot of women out there who absolutely understand this. There's a lot, you know, we get frustrated and we have a lot on our plate, but I think it's a key piece to take a deep breath and forgive our husbands, and it just makes it a lot simpler, you know, to live with someone if you can just let that stuff go where it belongs and move forward instead of keeping score and being filled with grudges. It doesn't help. And so praying really does make a difference. Having God in your life really makes a very positive impact on a marriage.
Very
Well,
good.
and praying about how to work together. You're not lording over your wife, but that you're a team, and you pray about how that looks and the give and take and what your roles actually are through God, not through what you see them to be.
Yeah. Well, Ron and Deb, thank you so very much. And for those of you, if you have not yet begun to pray together as a couple, this process that Ron and Deb talked about, I would encourage you, as maybe one of the things you choose from your spiritual health assessment, to begin to enjoy the fruit of praying together as a couple. Have a great week.